In the heart of a bustling city, there stood an old hospital known for its excellent care yet whispered about for its eerie aura.
Ward 13, a forgotten section of this hospital, had been closed for years due to unexplained incidents.
However, due to overcrowding, it was reluctantly reopened. Dr. Ethan Gray, a renowned surgeon, was assigned a peculiar case in this ward.
A young woman plagued by hallucinations, constantly conversing with invisible entities.
Her condition was critical, requiring immediate surgery.
As Dr. Gray and his team prepared for the operation, the woman's whispers grew louder, repeating, "You cannot kill my doctor."
The musty scent of disuse lingered in the air of Ward 13, and the faint, distant sound of the bustling hospital seemed like whispers from another world. Dr. Gray, whose hands were steady in the face of death, felt an uncharacteristic tremor of fear as he stepped into the ward. Halfway through the surgery, in the sterile silence of the operating room, an inexplicable chill swept through. The lights flickered, casting ominous shadows. Suddenly, Dr. Gray collapsed, unconscious, leaving the team in chaos. Dr. Sarah Lewis, second in command, took over with unwavering determination, completing the surgery against all odds. "Did you feel that?" whispered a nurse, her voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. Post-surgery, the woman recovered. Her hallucinations ceased, but she left the hospital without a word, casting a lingering glance at Ward 13. The next day, tragedy struck. Dr. Lewis, who returned home exhausted, was found dead by her neighbors, seated in her living room, still dressed in her scrubs. Her expression was frozen in a mix of horror and disbelief. No signs of struggle, no apparent cause of death. Rumors swirled among hospital staff and patients. Some spoke of a curse linked to Ward 13, others of vengeful spirits haunting those who dared tread its cursed halls. The most chilling theory was that the woman's hallucinations were not figments of her mind, but spectral warnings. As investigations ensued, strange occurrences multiplied. Equipment malfunctioned, inexplicable cold spots appeared, and patients in Ward 13 spoke of seeing shadowy figures. The staff was on edge. Whispers of the curse of Ward 13 echoed in the corridors. Dr. Ethan Gray, who miraculously recovered, refused to set foot in Ward 13 again. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something unseen and malevolent had brushed past him that fateful night. The hospital administration, rattled by these events, decided to shut down Ward 13 indefinitely. But the mysteries remain unsolved, the whispers continue, and the shadows, they seem to linger, waiting, watching, in the abandoned halls of the once bustling Ward 13.
In the chilling account of the forgotten halls of Nanaimo, a true story of neglect and despair unfolds within the corridors of Nanaimo Hospital. It begins with a patient, a man admitted for urgent care, only to find himself relegated to the hallway. For 2 agonizing nights, his only rest is in a chair, surrounded by the echoes of a healthcare system in distress. The halls of the hospital, meant to be places of healing, transform into scenes of a harrowing reality. There's a disturbing undercurrent of stories about patients left unattended, the most haunting being a woman who tragically lost her life in the waiting room at Ree, her needs unmet in the overcrowded facility. The situation worsens as calls to 911 in British Columbia yield little more than prolonged waits on hold. It paints a grim picture of an emergency system stretched beyond its limits, where the concept of hall medicine becomes an everyday occurrence, rather than an exception. Days turn into nights, and the hospital's hallways grow more crowded with patients, each a silent testament to the failing healthcare infrastructure. Nurses and doctors, once beacons of hope, now move with a sense of defeat, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of those in need. In a particularly chilling incident, a patient, long ignored, collapses in the hallway, succumbing to their condition before help can arrive. This tragedy marks a turning point, exposing the stark reality of medical neglect. Despite the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerges in the form of a nurse who shares inside stories of the hospital's struggles. Overcrowded ERs, understaffed wards, and patients treated in hallways due to a chronic lack of space are just the tip of the iceberg. As the narrative unfolds, a patient, initially ignored, finally receives the attention he needs. He is moved to a room in an almost forgotten wing of the hospital, revealing another layer of the healthcare crisis. This wing, isolated and barely functional, houses a room filled with records documents that tell tales of years of ignored incidents and unheeded warnings about the decaying healthcare system.